It was just after sunrise on a warm summer morning in 2007 when the quiet of a Rowland Heights neighbourhood was shattered. Neighbours woke up to the sound of a woman screaming in absolute panic. When they rushed outside, they saw Manling Chiang Williams stumbling around her driveway, her hands and feet smeared with blood, crying out for help. Inside her condo was something out of a nightmare. At the top of the stairs lay her husband, Neil Williams, only 27 years old, his body covered in blood. Later, the coroner would report he had been stabbed over 90 times. Upstairs in the kids' room, the couple's two little boys, Devon, age 7, and Ian, age 3, were tucked into their beds as if they were peacefully asleep. But detectives quickly realised both boys had been suffocated, pillows pressed down over their faces. On the floor near Neil's body was the weapon, a long bloodied samurai sword. For Neil's mother, Jan Williams, that day became the moment her life split into before and after. She was at work when she first heard her daughter-in-law's frantic screams through the phone, followed by deputies confirming her son had been found dead. At first, Jan thought maybe it was some kind of accident. But when she got to the sheriff's station and officers finally told her the truth, she just couldn't wrap her head around it. Murder. And worse. The boys too. What made it all even harder was that just hours before the bodies were discovered, Manling had been telling a very different story. Around 7:30 a.m, she calmly called 911 and claimed she'd come back from grocery shopping to find her family murdered. On the taped interview that followed, she appeared desperate, asking, "Does anyone know if my husband is okay? I want my babies. Please let them be okay." But investigators quickly noticed things didn't add up. Neighbours said they'd already seen her outside before sunrise, screaming that her husband had been hurt, long before that 911 call. There were no signs of forced entry either. To detectives, it started looking less like a random break-in and more like something that had come from inside the family, and that was shocking because a few years earlier Neil and Manling had looked like any other young suburban couple starting out. Neil had met her back in 1999 when he was just 19 and working the morning shift at a Subway. She was a friend of one of his co-workers, and Neil would later tell people that from the moment he met her, he thought she was beautiful and easy to talk to. Not long after Neil and Manling started dating, things moved quickly. Manling got pregnant, and by July 2000, their first son, Devon Michael Williams, was born. A year later, they made it official with a wedding in 2001. They even had a bigger church ceremony afterward, and eventually they bought a small condo in Rowland Heights. In the fall of 2003, their second son, Ian Harold Williams, came along. The boys were adored by everyone around them. Devon was the outgoing one, nicknamed the goofy one, always coming up with imaginative ideas and once saying he wanted to study monkeys when he got to college. Ian, on the other hand, was the mischievous little brother, always curious and into everything. Their grandmother Jan cherished the nights she tucked them in. One night, after singing Puff the Magic Dragon, Devon had asked her in that innocent, fearful way kids sometimes do, "Why does it say a dragon lives forever but not so little boys?" She hugged him close, telling him it just meant kids grow up and move on. But after the tragedy, that memory replayed in her head, over and over. "I promised him he was safe in his bed, and he wasn't," she whispered to herself countless times. For the first few years, life looked normal enough. Neil eventually left his sandwich shop job and devoted himself to raising the boys while Manling worked different jobs, sometimes waitressing. From the outside, they were a picture of a young suburban family just making it work. But by the summer of 2007, those cracks beneath the surface started to show. Court records later revealed that Manling had reconnected with an old high school friend from Taiwan, and the relationship quickly became an affair. She sent him romantic messages and spent time with him, and prosecutors said he was actively encouraging her to leave her husband. One acquaintance testified that Manling had been infatuated with this man for years. Prosecutors would later argue that the affair, and her desire to escape her life as a wife and mother, became the driving motive behind what happened next. In the very early morning hours of that August day, Manling put her plan into action with a disturbing sense of calm. Around 3 a.m, she quietly crept upstairs into the boys' bedroom. She climbed into the top bunk where 3-year-old Ian was sleeping, and pressed a pillow down over his tiny face until he stopped breathing. Then she climbed down and went to Devon, smothering the 7-year-old under his SpongeBob blanket. Both boys, sound asleep, never even woke up. What's chilling is what she did afterward. Instead of panicking or showing any sign of remorse, she acted like nothing had happened. Evidence later showed she logged onto her computer, checked her lover's online profile, and even went out for pizza with friends. By the time she slipped back into the condo, dawn was just breaking. Inside, Neil Williams was still asleep on the couch, wearing just a t-shirt and shorts. Manling walked in, went straight to his collection of swords, and picked out the heaviest samurai blade. Then, with him completely unaware, she crept up behind him. Prosecutors would later emphasize how there was no struggle at all. Neil never even woke up. What happened next was pure frenzy. With the heavy samurai sword in her hands, Manling brought it down again and again on Neil. The medical examiner would later testify that she was both slashing and stabbing, over and over, until Neil's body was left with more than 90 separate wounds. When it was done, she simply placed the bloodied sword beside him, locked up the condo, and walked away. By around 6 a.m, the massacre of her husband and 2 young sons was complete. From there, she shifted straight into her cover story. She tossed a few groceries into her car to make it look like she'd been out shopping, then headed back to the condo to put her plan into motion. At 7:30 that morning, she dialed 911 with a dramatic story. She claimed she'd just gotten home to find her husband and kids dead inside. Deputies raced to the scene. On camera, Manling sobbed and pleaded, "Does anyone know if my husband is okay? I want my babies." But almost immediately, detectives felt something was off. For one, there was no sign of a break-in. The condo was locked, no doors or windows forced. Blood spatter told its own story too, showing Neil hadn't even had a chance to fight back. And neighbours complicated things further when they reported they'd already seen Manling outside hours earlier, screaming that her husband was hurt, well before that 911 call. The timeline wasn't adding up, and investigators knew it. Within just 2 days, Los Angeles County deputies placed her under arrest, charging Manling Chang Williams with 3 counts of first-degree murder. When detectives laid out the evidence, the internet logs, her statements, the lack of forced entry, even a fake suicide note she had tried to post on Neil's MySpace, Manling eventually admitted what she had done. Her 2010 trial was tense. Prosecutors said it was a cold, calculated family annihilation, planned in advance. They showed jurors the forensic trail, blood evidence, pillow fibers, the staged online note. The defense, meanwhile, argued she had snapped after years of hardship and acted in a sudden fit of rage. But the jury wasn't convinced. After less than a day of deliberations, they found her guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder, so the judge made the final decision. On January 20th, 2012, he sentenced Manling Chang Williams to death.